Americans overseas are giving up their U.S. citizenship faster than ever. I'm Scott Ott, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com, as well as by our friends at the Patriot Post. There'll be a link in the description below where you can sign up for their email list and get a free copy of the Patriots Primer on American Liberty. Bill Whittle and Stephen Green are with me. And gentlemen, this is really a PR release that I found at newswire.com from an accounting firm in New York that says, according to government figures, 2,909 Americans gave up their citizenship in the first 3 months of 2020, which is actually, in that first quarter, substantially more than gave up their citizenship in all of 2019. Now, the number of people out of some 9 million American expatriates who live overseas, the number of people who give up their citizenship is relatively small and has been declining in recent years since about 2017. But this is a big spike in the first quarter. The accounting firm in New York attributes that to the possibility that people now have some time on their hands and they've been meaning to do it for a while anyway. And so they just decided to fill out the paperwork and pay the $2,350 that you have to pay to sacrifice your American citizenship and therefore move into a position where you're dodging American taxes. Not dodging, technically. You're no longer responsible for that. Stephen Green, I'd like to take this story as a jumping off point really to ask this question. And I know it's going to be difficult for both of you to imagine this, but what would it take for you to surrender your American citizenship, to actually walk into a U.S. embassy on foreign soil, assuming you've been living on foreign soil for a couple of years, and hand them $2,350 and say, I want to renounce my American citizenship? What circumstances could possibly trigger that?
The only circumstance I could possibly imagine where I would give up my American citizenship would be some foreign military occupation in which I somehow did not get killed with my big mouth, where American citizenship simply ceased to be because this was no longer a country. Short of that, you can pull my passport from my cold, dead hands, period. That's the only way you're getting that, all right? A couple of thoughts here, though. One, I read a book, must come out 25 years ago. It was a really interesting read by a couple of English gentlemen called The Sovereign Individual. And a lot of the stuff they talked about in this book, the changes that they saw coming in the world in the next 30 to 40 years, wow, they really nailed a lot of stuff right in this book. But one of the things that stuck in my memory, it's called The Sovereign Individual, if you didn't get this. One of the things that stuck in my memory.
I'm writing it down.
It's a great read. It's held up very nicely. They kind of predicted Bitcoin when they talked about crypto banking. This is 1993, 94, I think they published this thing. Anyway, they talked about if you work overseas, an American passport is the most expensive document you can possibly own because unlike, I think, every other country in the world, the IRS will tax the money you earned overseas while you were overseas. I believe we are unique in that, and it just goes to show you what a corrupt and awful thing the IRS is, and you can thank the progressives for creating it. That said, I have a theory on this. I believe, I don't have numbers to back this up, but I would imagine that a higher than normal percentage of people who work overseas tend to work in international industries such as banking and finance and whatnot. And many of those industries are headquartered in the American Northeast. And if you are from New York or northern New Jersey or Philadelphia, and you're looking at the Wuhan flu death rates in that area, and you're safe overseas, you might be thinking, do I really want to go back to any place where Andrew Cuomo is calling the shots?
Well, Bill, it's not clear whether any of these people ever intend to come back anyway, and it seems like these are mostly long-term foreign residents. Steve is correct. U.S. citizens living abroad still have to file U.S. tax returns, potentially pay U.S. tax, and report all their foreign bank accounts, investments, and pensions held outside of the U.S. And according to this Newswire story I saw, for many Americans, this intrusion is just too much, and they take this really serious step of renouncing their citizenship since they don't plan to return to the United States anyway. If you were in that circumstance and you knew you probably weren't coming back to the United States, would you even consider, or what circumstances would spur you to consider basically flipping off the IRS and saying, here, we're going to renounce my U.S. citizenship?
I think what it would take for me to renounce my U.S. citizenship would be the establishment of a country that is freer than the United States is, all across the board, and some length of time to show that it's that it's serious. If you were to present a country that was true to the original intent of the Constitution, that didn't spend the last 100 years trying to say that the Commerce Clause says something that it doesn't say, so that the government can tell you what you can grow and not grow and what you have to buy and not buy. If there was a country more like what America used to be, then I would give very serious thought about going there, because America is an idea and it's not a territory, and it's not even a passport. It's not even really a flag. The flag represents the idea. The flag represents the idea that you should be left alone to the maximum ability possible without you harming other people, and that you are the master of your own life. To just give you one example. Forget about all the encroachment on Second Amendment rights, encroachment on First Amendment rights. We now live in a country where we have accepted the idea that during a political rally or something, that this is a free speech zone. You go stand behind the barbed wire over there, or the chicken wire or whatever, and you can have your opinion over there. The whole country is a free speech zone. The whole country is a right to work state. There's no such thing. The whole country is a right to work state. It's just ridiculous that it's not. And all of these things have crept up on us. But just to give you one small example of the kind of thing that nobody really thinks about, and that's simply this. This is a question for people out there who may be watching the show. How many of you out there own your homes? In other words, how many of you out there have paid off your mortgages to the bank and have clear title to your home? And the answer is none of you own your homes. None of you own your homes. Nobody owns your homes in this country. You rent them from the government. If you don't pay your property taxes, men with guns will come and take you away from that house. You don't own that house. You're renting your house from the government. And if you don't make the annual rent payments in terms of property taxes, you will be thrown out of this house that you paid for and that you think you own. And if you could present me with a country that understood this and was clear on the idea that I have a right to defend myself, that I have a right to determine my own destiny, that school should be used to teach information and not ideology, and that when I own something, that means I own it. I'm willing to pay tax to allow a government to function, but the taxes should be as small as possible. The work should be done as efficiently as possible. And when I own something, I own it. I don't have to keep paying for it. You show me a place that's got those things going, and I'm taking my American flag with me, and I'll be an American. There's the Italian Americans, and I'll be an American, Troflamadorian. But
great Vonnegut reference.
But we don't see that, and we won't. The only thing I can ever foresee looking forward into the idea of a place that is more America than the United States is if certain states were to secede from the federal government and establish themselves more in lines with what the original intent of this country was. I love the idea of this country. I think the Constitution is flawless. I think all of our troubles, all of them, result from our unwillingness to be able to clearly argue with the people who say that something says something and it doesn't. No, that's not what it says. It's a plain English sentence. I read English. Well, the Supreme Court says, well, the Supreme Court's wrong. The Supreme Court's wrong about this one, because that's what the sentence says, and that's a sentence that authorizes the Supreme Court in the first place, comes from that document. I can read English, and if they disagree with what's clearly there, then they're wrong. This kind of thing is what would cause me to renounce my American citizenship. But there's no... That's not on the horizon. And so I stay in, as you guys do, I stay loyal to this country and fight for this country, not only because of what it was, but because of what remains of it. And the main reason I stay here and would never give up my U.S. citizenship, except in that circumstance, is because the future is not determined. It can be what it was before. Freedom can be recovered. You can take a car that's been out back a Model T that's been rusting in a barn for 50 years. And if you put enough love and attention into it, you can roll it out. It looks like it was built this morning. All of this can be recovered. And if I didn't think that, then I'd be a lot more despondent than I normally am. But you can restore it. So the question is how? And that's why we're here.
You know, the prospect of renouncing my citizenship seems at one level unimaginable. When I hear the question that I ask, which, you know, what would it take for you to spend $2,350 to renounce your U.S. citizenship? I flipped it in my own head and said, how much would somebody have to give me? How much money would they have to pay me before I was willing to renounce my citizenship? And then
there's no money.
My inner greedy nature grudgingly acknowledged that there probably is some figure where I'd say, you know what, it's just a piece of paper. Come on.
Not for me.
And so I don't know. What I would say to anybody out there listening is, go ahead and tempt me. Let's see how far this goes. But I don't. It's really hard to imagine. I mean, in a certain sense, as a believer in Jesus Christ, I'm a monarchist. I'm a citizen of heaven. The kingdom of God is my home. But there is, see, the reason why I can't renounce my citizenship is because I can't renounce myself. You can't beat it out of me. There's no part of my physical or emotional or mental makeup that is the U.S. part. The values that make this country great are infused into every particle of my being. And so I can't throw that away. I mean, I could walk into a courtroom today and change my name to something else, but I can't change who I really am. And I think that was what was fascinating about this story to me, is that there were some 3,000 people in the first quarter who said, yeah, well, I've been living overseas, don't avoid American taxes. I think I'll go ahead and pay the money and renounce my citizenship. I wonder whether the people who do that ever fully grasped what it means to be a U.S. citizen, whether they fully are able to, maybe when you get away for a while, you lose touch of that. Maybe you become tainted with ideas from other cultures. And I don't mean that all ideas from other cultures are bad, but I mean, eventually, you know, you swim around in the septic tank long enough and you begin to think it's water. So that could be what's active here. I would just say that I can't imagine it myself. I can't leave the United States of America. The United States of America would have to leave me. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com and our friends at the Patriot Post for making this possible.